You're listening to a production of the National Media Archive. To learn more or volunteer, go to nationalmediaarchive.com. But according to the Gospel of Matthew, there was another rumor that started spreading right after. The official version calls it a lie, but the story goes that Jesus' closest followers secretly moved his body. If that version were true, then following first-century Jewish burial customs, his body would have been taken to a more private family tomb, hidden away from the authorities. He would have been wrapped in linen and left to decompose. A year later, the tradition was that family and followers would return, gather the bones, and place them in a small limestone coffin called an ossuary. They would inscribe his name on it and store it deep inside the family tomb, tucked in the rock forever. Two women would certainly have been there. His mother Mary and Mary Magdalene. His brothers, whose names were Simon, Joseph, Judah, and James, would have helped prepare the bones for that final step. This was the way it was done. If this rumor was true, then somewhere beneath the modern streets of Jerusalem, there could be a sealed family chamber that once held the remains of the man known as Jesus. Decades ago, in the spring of 1980, in a neighborhood just south of the old city of Jerusalem, blasting work for new construction exposed the mouth of a hidden burial cave. It was roughly 2,000 years old. Workers, under pressure to finish the job, called in archaeologists for a fast salvage excavation. They had only 3 days before the tomb would be sealed and built over. One young surveyor named Shimon was among the first to climb inside. He mapped every inch by hand. The tomb had one central chamber cut from rock with deep burial niches radiating out from it. In those side cavities, they found 10 small limestone bone boxes. Each one is called an ossuary. The boxes were moved to Jerusalem's Rockefeller Museum under the care of the national department that oversees all ancient finds. The remains were bagged and reburied elsewhere, following religious demands by the Orthodox Jewish community. The stone boxes, however, were kept for study. Inside this tomb, 6 out of the 10 boxes had names carved on them. Unlike grand stone carvings, these were quick, rough marks meant for family to know who was inside each box when they returned to rearrange the tomb for new burials. The practice of placing bones in ossuaries in Jerusalem only lasted about a century and ended when the Romans destroyed the city around 70 of the Common Era. That means these boxes and their names are a tight snapshot of that specific moment in time, the time of Jesus. Among these names, one carving stood out. It was written in Aramaic. It read, Yeshua bar Yosef, Jesus, son of Joseph. The archaeologists noted it and boxed it away with the others. Today, that same box sits locked in a government storage room, mostly ignored. To understand if that box could really have held Jesus of Nazareth's bones, you have to look at all the evidence inside that same family tomb. Every other name matters. If one box says Jesus, son of Joseph, then the other boxes should connect. The gospel stories say that Jesus had 4 brothers, James, Joseph, Judah, and Simon. His mother was Mary. He was close to Mary Magdalene. If this truly is his family tomb, those other names should appear too. Inside the tomb, another ossuary had a single name carved in ancient Hebrew letters. It spelled Maria, a Latin version of Mary. This form of the name matches how the Gospels refer to the Virgin Mary. In that time, the name Maria was rare in Hebrew, but it did exist. Nearby, another box had a short name that at first confused scholars, Matia. It looks like Matthew. Matthew was not recorded as a brother, but digging deeper into the ancient family trees shows that the name Matthew appears multiple times in the lineages connected to both Mary and Joseph. It was a priestly name, connected to the royal house of David and the Maccabean rebels, so Matia would fit as an extended family name inside the same tomb. One of the most curious inscriptions was on a box buried deeper in the chamber. It said Yosa. This is not the same as Joseph. Yosa, sometimes spelled Josie, was a nickname. According to the Gospel of Mark, the earliest gospel, Jesus had a brother called Josie. This nickname spelling is unique. There is no other ancient tomb in Jerusalem that has it. So, within one tomb, archaeologists found a Jesus son of Joseph, a Maria, a Matia, and a Yosa. 4 bone boxes, 4 names that match the family described in the earliest Christian writings. And then there is the story of what happened next. The entire tomb was sealed over. Modern apartments were built on top. Most of the world forgot it existed, but the names did not disappear. For years, they sat cataloged on fragile paper inside museum archives. When scholars revisited the records, they realized how extraordinary it was to find all these names together. Statistically, names like Jesus, Joseph, and Mary were common, but the chance of finding this exact cluster inside one family tomb, carved at the same time, is vanishingly small. One statistician who studied every name found in that period concluded that when you multiply the commonness of each name by how they appear together, the odds that this is not the family of Jesus drop to 1 in 600. When you add in more connections, the odds drop even lower. But to strengthen the case, you have to ask, where is the missing piece? One ossuary went missing. Some believe it resurfaced years later with another famous inscription, James, son of Joseph, brother of Jesus. If that missing box really came from this same tomb, then all these separate threads join into one story. Before that mystery could be solved, the tomb was covered in concrete, hidden under apartments and gardens, with only old maps to mark where it might be found again. When the original excavation ended in 1980, the entrance was hidden under concrete and new buildings. For decades, it was almost forgotten except by a few archaeologists and curious researchers who studied the records left behind. One key clue sat in the form of a carved mark over the tomb's entrance, a design that looked like a chevron above a circle. No one knew exactly what it meant. Some thought it was just decoration. Others believed it was a mark of family or faith, maybe even an early sign that connected to the small group of followers who would become known as the first Christians. Inside, some of the bone boxes also showed unusual markings. One box had a faint mark that looked like a cross. Archaeologists dismissed it at first. They called it a mason's mark, a guide for aligning the lid. But others wondered if this simple mark, made centuries before the Roman cross became a symbol of faith, could have meant something different to those early followers. In the ancient language of the time, the letter tau, drawn like a cross, marked the final letter in the Hebrew alphabet. It stood for a completion, an end, a seal. It was a sign that carried a meaning of finishing or sealing something important. The book of Ezekiel in the Hebrew Bible describes people marked on their foreheads with this sign to show they were righteous and chosen to survive what was coming. In the New Testament, Jesus is recorded saying, "He is the beginning and the end, the first and the last." In his own tongue, he would have used the words aleph and tau, the first and last letters. So perhaps for his earliest followers, a simple cross mark on a box did not point to the crucifixion, but instead to a promise, a mark that this person belonged to something sealed and sacred. While these theories grew, the tomb remained sealed away under layers of stone and city streets. But new technology offered a way to look for answers without tearing down entire buildings. Small probe cameras, only as wide as a finger, could be slipped through pipes and gaps to see what lay hidden. Some of these pipes had been installed years ago, sometimes to respect religious beliefs that spirits must have a clear path in and out of sealed tombs. A team of modern researchers, engineers, and experts gathered blueprints of the apartment complex. They cross-referenced the old excavation maps with the new building plans, searching for the exact place where the tomb's mouth might still sit buried. They believed the main tomb was sealed under a small garden area tucked between 2 buildings. With permission from a resident, they used a probe camera and pushed it deep down through an old vent pipe. As the camera slid downward, they watched the black screen, hoping to catch sight of old stone walls. The pipe bent around rock, then opened into darkness. A faint light showed old cut stone. They realized they were looking at the lost tomb, hidden just meters below everyday life above. Inside, the team hoped to find clues that might connect more names together. If the missing box marked James, son of Joseph, really belonged here, then comparing it scientifically to the other boxes would be critical. To prove the link, they turned to the science of patina. Patina is a thin layer of mineral that slowly coats stone surfaces in a tomb. The conditions inside every sealed cave are slightly different. Moisture, minerals, and airflow leave a unique fingerprint on everything buried there. If the missing James box had the same patina as the other boxes found inside the Talpiot tomb, then the odds would strongly support that they all came from the same family chamber. When samples were taken from the James box and compared to the patina of the known boxes, the chemical signatures matched. The random samples from unrelated tombs did not match at all. The match was tight enough that statisticians said the chance this was random was less than 1 in 30,000. If true, this means that the tomb once held not only Jesus, son of Joseph, Maria, Matia, and Yosa, but also James, son of Joseph, the brother recorded in the ancient texts as the leader of the early followers after Jesus' death. But that is not all. Another ossuary in this tomb carried an inscription that puzzled the researchers. It read, Mariamne, followed by the title Mara. In Aramaic, Mara means master or teacher. This word, carved beside a woman's name, was unusual. It meant respect, a sign that this woman held authority. In early writings outside the official Gospels, Mary Magdalene is described as more than just a follower. She was called an apostle to the apostles, a teacher, a leader. Some ancient texts even name her Mariamne, the same rare spelling found on the bone box. This detail raised a startling question. Could Mary Magdalene, the trusted follower who stayed with Jesus until the end, be buried in the same tomb? And if so, why was her name marked with a title that meant master? For some historians, this suggests that her role in the early movement was far greater than what later tradition allowed. To test this theory, scientists extracted tiny traces of DNA residue left behind inside the Jesus son of Joseph box and the Mariamne box. They wanted to see if these two people were related by blood. The remains were old and fragile, but the lab managed to recover enough material to run tests on mitochondrial DNA, which passes only through the mother's line. The results were clear. The two people were not maternally related. They were not brother and sister, and they were not mother and child, but they lay side by side in a sealed family tomb. In a culture where only family shared a final resting place, this suggested a different bond, perhaps that they were husband and wife. The possibility that Jesus and Mary Magdalene were married and buried together has stirred debate for centuries. Yet here was a physical clue, hidden for 2,000 years, saying it might be true. Beside them, a small ossuary inscribed with the name Judah, son of Jesus, added another layer to the story. No gospel text mentions Jesus having a child. But if Jesus and Mary Magdalene were married, then the existence of a son would have been a dangerous secret in a world where the family of acclaimed king could be hunted by Rome. This possibility reframes old passages where Jesus speaks to an unnamed beloved disciple. Some have wondered if that disciple was his child, protected in secret and hidden behind parables and coded words. The tomb story was never finished. The team discovered a second tomb chamber nearby. They cleared blocked pipes, lowered more cameras, and found themselves staring into untouched darkness that had not seen daylight in 2,000 years. The path was blocked again by modern arguments and city rules. The residents above wanted their homes left in peace, and so the entrance was sealed yet again, shutting away any answers that still lay inside. The mystery did not stop with the sealed entrance and the camera left hanging in the dark. Another clue turned up in the records. A single child's bone box marked with the name Judah, son of Jesus. The writing was clear. But the mention of a child never appears in the Gospels. If Jesus did have a son, it would have been dangerous knowledge. Roman rulers saw anyone claiming royal blood from King David as a threat to their rule. If there was a child, the family and followers would have kept him hidden. Any hint of a child would have put the boy at risk of the same execution that ended Jesus' life. One possibility is that the small Judah bone box really does belong to this family. and that the boy was laid to rest beside his father, mother, grandmother, and uncles. Another possibility is that this was just another boy, another common name, mixed by coincidence. But when the names are all lined up, Jesus, son of Joseph, Maria, Matia, Yosa, James, Mariamne called Master, and Judah, son of Jesus, the coincidences begin to feel heavy, weighted by the statistics and the stubborn stone that guards their secret. Over the years, stories of other finds have surfaced. The tomb of Caiaphas, the priest who had Jesus arrested and sent for execution, was found by accident in 1990 when bulldozers cut into another hidden burial cave. His bone box carried his name twice, carved deeply and decorated with rich detail, marking him as a man of power. Scholars quickly agreed this was the same Caiaphas named in the Gospels. If the high priest's tomb could be found by a bulldozer, why is it so hard to accept that the tomb of Jesus' family might be found by construction too? But here, instead of confirmation, debate always steps in. When the James ossuary surfaced in 2002, some said the inscription that added "brother of Jesus" was a fake. Others argued that only the last part was tampered with, while the names James, son of Joseph, were original and true to the missing record. The stone itself matched the same soft Jerusalem limestone as the other boxes. The patina matched too. Tests showed the mineral fingerprints were identical. Random tomb samples did not match. Taken together, the evidence suggests that the James box might really have come from the Talpiot tomb. If true, that box brings the full circle of names even tighter, and the statistical odds swing again, from 1 in 600 down to 1 in 30,000, that this is not the family of Jesus of Nazareth. Some believe the missing box was stolen or sold to collectors during the confusion of the original excavation, when workers moved fast and rules were loose. If so, then an ancient box passed quietly through markets and dealers until it landed in the hands of a modern collector who did not even know what it was until scholars saw the inscription and raised the alarm. If the bones once inside that James box really did belong to the brother of Jesus, they may have been lost forever. But the stone remains and the inscription remains, just like the tomb waiting below the apartment garden, hidden under concrete and stone and layers of time. Beneath the same city streets where tourists walk the Stations of the Cross today, under the old paving stones of the Via Dolorosa, another piece of the puzzle sat ignored for decades. An ossuary marked Alexander, son of Simon. According to the Gospels, when Jesus stumbled under the weight of the cross, a man named Simon from Cyrene was forced by Roman soldiers to help carry it. His sons, Alexander and Rufus, became known followers. The box marked Alexander, son of Simon, was found, cataloged, and then stored away under a dusty shelf. It bore a symbol that matched the mark over the Talpiot tomb, a circle within a chevron. Some believe this simple sign could be an early mark for the followers of Jesus before the cross became their symbol, a hidden sign left by a community that stayed small and secret, their bones marked by quiet codes, their names scratched by hand for those who would come back to care for them. Modern science now reaches for the secrets that these tombs might still hold. Researchers have begun using new scans and DNA tests to hunt for tiny traces left behind. Bone dust caught in the cracks of the limestone, strands of hair or flecks of skin too small to see. Each test pulls another thread through the tangle of history, religion, myth, and science. Yet each time someone gets close, the walls close again. Pipes are blocked. Doors are locked. Cement is poured. The people living above want peace, not headlines or cameras or endless debate. But deep below, sealed behind centuries of silence, the old bones rest, waiting for the day when someone might lift the slab, crack open the heavy lid, and see whether the world's greatest story still has another page left to turn.